Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. You join me here in England's sunny Welton, outside the window there, where I am this weekend, enjoying the company of my daughter and her partner's cats, Nancy and Steve. We may get invaded. Anyhow, to business. We're here to look at the albums of English sort of becoming English/American popular beat combo, King Crimson. The albums of what I own. Now, I own all their albums. There you go. That's a lie. Actually, there's an asterisk. I own their 13 canonical studio albums. There are loads of live albums and offshoot projects, literally called projects, and stuff like that, which I don't necessarily. I've got some of them, but whatever. And clearly, anyone knows anything about King Crimson, there's only one permanent member, and that's Robert Fripp. Where's he from now? Dorset based guitar genius, I suppose, any word to describe him, and collaborator along with many, many great names that we all know, notably Brian Eno on several albums, which I've got, David Sylvian, David Bowie, Peter Gabriel, Blondie, there you go, Talking Heads, all sorts of people that he's worked with, all sorts. And he's an odd character. Probably most famously known for his somewhat comedic performances with his wife Toyah Willcox, and they've been married since, I believe, 1984 or 86. I don't know, a long time. Anyhow, happy days to them. Anyhow, let's move on. Their first album. Now then, everyone who likes rock music knows this one. Let's get it on there. In the Court of King Crimson. Definitely a 5-star album, a masterpiece, I would say. And I would imagine most people know this album pretty well. Credited with being the first prog rock album, which I think is a bit exaggerated. It's not the first, but it's certainly up there. And certainly mammothly influential / innovative, whatever. Been listening to it today. It's 1969, so it's getting on. 56 years old, but it has aged a little, only because we know what comes after. You understand what I'm saying? It is quite remarkable, quite a remarkable album. Lots of jazz, basically. Lots of jazz and neoclassical, I would say. Sort of a cross between Bartok and Miles Davis and whatever, and that's a feature of their early work. This is what's known as the first band. There was a precursor band called Giles and Fripp, which made one album, and then a lot of comings and goings. This group, King Crimson, formed, involving the kernel of Giles and Fripp, but also such luminaries as renowned Father Christmas loyalist Greg Lake, before he started wasting his time in ELP. But anyhow, a great album, a masterpiece, no doubt, absolutely no question. So what came after? Well, in 1970, one whole year later, came this one called In the Wake of Poseidon. I would say 3 stars. It should really be called In the Wake of In the Court of King Crimson. It's pretty much not exactly a reworking, but it's very much in the shadow of its predecessor. Now, I think if you heard this first, you think, my God, that's a genius album, But when you're familiar with the first album, the second album, yeah, it's a little bit lesser. I would say 3 stars. I would add, I think there aren't any bad albums. I think 3 stars as low as we're going. Followed by, in 1971, I think, Lizard. Now, there's a group of 3 albums in this sort of phase of the band, the sort of second band, although the lineup is never stable during this period. For instance, Greg Lake, who we discussed on the last album, he was a full-time member at that point. By now he's left to join ELP, but he returns as a guest singer, although he only sings, he doesn't play bass on this. I know. They've also got a lyricist who isn't really in the band, a guy called Peter Sinfield, who's a computer programmer who writes their lyrics for them. And he's a sort of accredited member of the band, although he doesn't do anything. He sort of appears on stage a bit Richie James-like, pretending to play guitar a bit. This I find a really good album. I could probably only go 4 stars. Robert Fripp described it as unlistenable. But it's a very interesting album, and it's beautiful cover art. As befits its cover art, it has got a sort of medieval vibe to it. There's quite a bit of folkiness and a lot of jazziness. Jazziness is the feature, I think, of this earlier period of Crimson. 4th album from, I think, 1972, Islands, which is, well, a lot of people think this is their worst album. I like it a lot. It's not remarkable in the way that some of the other albums are. It's not sort of taking your breath away, but it's very relaxing. It's just very nice, Lots of beautiful passages, very well-crafted ballads, a nice album. Again, 4 stars. Now then, that band falls apart. Yeah? Robert effectively, I don't know, disbands the band after Islands, which was, I'm just checking my bit of paper here. Oh, I'm lying, was actually 1971, and Lizard was 1970, as well as Poseidon. So I've got my years wrong there. So it sort of took a hiatus, and then the band reformed, and this is, I think, the best period of the band coming up now. We've got 3 albums in a row here from the third band, as they're known. First up, wow, my personal favourite, Lark's Tongues in Aspic, which is, well, it's beyond masterpiece. It's 5 stars plus, as is the first album, as are 2 more to come. This band have 4 masterpieces in their canon. This is, well, you have to hear it to believe it. I honestly think it's one of the most breathtaking albums I've ever heard. And it's suffered a lot of criticism at certain times because it's not easy. A lot of people find it very wanky. Some of the contemporary reviews of it are very critical, but I just think it's actually amazing. Amazing. Yeah, I can't really describe the music. It's got the lot, man, and features the first 2 Lark's Tongues in Aspic tunes, bookending the album. 1973. Okay. And after that, they made another album from 1974. But I say another album. This is a bit of a swizz, this. It's not actually, but a great album. Starless and Bible Black, referring to the sky, the night sky. It's actually mainly a live album, but no one knew that. There are a couple of studio tracks on it, but it's all new material. But a lot of it was recorded live, and the sort of audience sounds and extraneous bangs and clangs were rubbed out. And then, so a lot of it's improvised as well. And it wasn't until several years later that anyone knew this. Robert Fripp revealed it later on, but kind of a live album, but counts within the canon of it's new material, whatever. There are some albums I like there, aren't there? They're live, but they're new material. Cramps is a classic in there, isn't it? Then in 1974 again, we get this one, another masterpiece, Red. Worst cover of their lineup, I feel. They look, this is 1974, they look like they're straight out of the 80s in it, don't they? They look like a bunch of tired old prog rockers. But But this isn't really, it is prog. What does prog mean? It's progressive music. I think there's probably a distinction there, isn't there? Prog, as we think of it, is all wizards and spiraling keyboard solos and whatever. Lovely, I like all that. But this is progressive, as in it's moving on, because this really is staggering. Again, like Lark's Tongues, but it's like a whole new grammar. And it's more proto-metal than anything else. But it is, and it's got an amazing, just an amazing selection of tracks on it. And violin work from a guy called David Cross. There was a guy on Lark's Tongues called Jamie Muir who was like a multi-instrumentalist guy. Amazing. But the band split up pretty much before this was finished even. It was sort of Bill Bruford and John Wetton's project, really. Fripp was a bit of a hired hand on it in a way. Bruford's the drummer and John Wetton was a friend of Fripp's from Dorset. He's like a sort of bass player and singer. But look at the horrible typeface. Anyhow, horrible looking album. Absolutely amazing sound, though. That is a masterpiece of an album. 5 stars. Then there was a large hiatus of nearly 8 years or 7 years in which Fripp released quite a lot of other stuff. Well, he sort of went off and went a bit hippie and set up some kind of commune and all sorts of weird stuff. He's a bit of a madman, as we know. But he famously worked with Bowie during that period. Obviously, we know his work from Heroes and Scary Monsters. And did quite a lot of collaboration work, and released a really good solo album, which you might include within the King Crimson canon, because let's face it, it's Robert Fripp, isn't it? So, in fact, if the name King Crimson had never been coined and he just called it the Robert Fripp Band, we'd be talking about it in the same way as we talk about Bowie or whoever, although he's not the singer, of course. But anyhow, back in 1981, the boys come back with Discipline. Now, the band had changed its format again. This is the fourth band. I've got a guy called Adrian Belew, who I think he might be from Texas. He's from Memphis, I think. I can't remember. An American who's the singer and lyricist. A bass / Chapman stick player called Tony Levin, and a drummer called Mastriano. And Fripp, and they were a band called Discipline. But they couldn't really get taken up by anyone, so they thought, well, we'll call ourselves King Crimson, and that way we'll get signed. So that's what they did. So it's really a new band, but they're called King Crimson, and that's why they're in the canon. And this is an amazing album, very, very new wavy, as well as proggy, because they just come off of pretty much working with Belew was in Talking Heads, as indeed Fripp had lots to do with them, and there's a big Talking Heads influence here. The first track, you would think it was David Byrne singing, which fortunately is not a style that the Belew keeps going, because that would get quite tiring. But so there's that. There's lots of polyrhythms and something called gamelan music, which I think is from Indonesia, and I think this is some kind of Indonesian thing here, and whatever. Anyhow, 5 stars. 5 stars. That is their last masterpiece. Really fantastic album. Really good. A lot of people think it's their best one. All the 4 that I'm calling masterpieces, you'll hear people say that's their best album or whatever. Followed that with the same lineup, basically, an album called Beat. I would put this at 3 stars. A lot of people like it. I mean, I don't dislike it. 3 stars is not rubbish. And it's quite a nice listen, actually. And it's a lot of it's to do with the Beat Poets, hence the name. 1982, this one. But 3 stars. The third album from the fourth band, Third of a Perfect Pair. Again, some people don't rate this very highly. I would give this a 4 star. Better than Beat. More engaging. Yeah, I like this one. I like it. 1984, that's from. Now, again, the band go on quite an extended hiatus now. And Fripp kind of disappears a bit, but still doing his stuff. He does some collabs with David Sylvian and all sorts of things. In fact, he wants David Sylvian to be the lead singer of a reformed King Crimson, which Sylvian turns down. But there we go. So we come to 1995. Now, just before this, they did a mini album called Vroom, which only exists on CD, and I've got that, which is really a working sketches for this album, Thark, which is beautiful. Yeah, I mean, this is a really good album, very metallic again. They're getting more heavy metal more than anything. Again, this is a different iteration of the band, the fifth band, shall we call it. Well, in fact, on here, we have the quite famous double triples. So when you listen to this, you sit between your speakers. There's one band playing in your left speaker and one band playing in your right speaker with guitar, bass, drums. It's quite odd, but it's progressive, isn't it? Thark, because it's tree and bark, I suppose. I'd give that a 4 stars. I like that album. Maybe quite hard, quite a difficult listen. It's not easy. It's not easy listening. Then we come on to the 12th album in their canon. Now then, this is where it gets a bit cheaty, because in, what year was it? 2000, they released an album called The Construction of Light, which is not available on vinyl. And this is a vinyl version of that album called The Reconstruction of Light, which was released in 2019. And the only real difference is they re-recorded the drums on here, because the original album had quite horrible synthetic drums. And when they wanted to put out a vinyl version, they couldn't find the originals, the masters, whatever. So the original drummer, Pat Marciano, came back and re-recorded his drum parts, and they pieced it all together and released it as this album, The Reconstruction. You see the way they put it, so Reconstruction with a K in the middle there, of Light, and this is good. I think, well, I've got the Ridge on CD, and it is pretty rubbish, actually. If we were really being honest, that's a 2-star, maybe even a 1.5-star album. It's just not very good. But this one's better. I would push this one up to certainly 3-star rankings, and a lot of people really love this album. But I'll go 3 stars there. Good stuff. And then their final studio album from 2003, I think it is. Yes, The Power to Believe. Now, this is a very good album. They'd been on tour with Tool, the American sort of progressive metal band, and you can feel that influence, actually. As in, it's in that kind of wheelhouse. Quite metally, quite hard, heavy, but good with it, very good. I would give this a strong 4 stars, heading towards 5. But there we go. So there we have 13 albums. I think I gave 5 of them 5 stars, and I would call 4 of them masterpieces, which is quite a heavy hit rate, isn't it? And nothing below a 3, unless we count the original of The Construction of Light. But, we've got to be whatever, haven't we? But why I did choose to do this visually, I think they're particularly nice covers, apart from that hideous one for Red, which arguably is the best album. Last Time Aspect's my favourite. That would be my 7-star album, although there are 4 7-star albums here. This is a remarkable selection. I heard rumours, I don't know if they're true or not, but Steve Kenny told me anyhow, that Steve Wilson is joining the band for a revival. I don't know how that'll work out. I mean, Fripp's nearly 80 now. Not that he shows any signs of aging. And he's a madman, but quite a happy chappy in a way, given that he's not always appeared to be the most happy. He's like the Stalin of music at times, but He was on Celebrity Mr. and Mrs. with Toyah, so there we go. Yes, a great band and a great catalogue of music that is truly remarkable. Not one that you could say to someone, oh, you'll love. It's not like Pink Floyd, which is probably the other end of prog, isn't it? Which is the more commercial, not so challenging. I'm not dissing it, by the way. Love Floyd, but I think you understand what I'm saying. Floyd's far more commercial, far more easily digestible to just rock fans, as it were. That would be an easier entry point into the world of prog, as it were. Whereas Crimson are pretty hardcore, but they're not proggy. They're not. If you're one of these people, and there are lots of them, and I was one of them until not that long ago. It was like, 70s prog. I don't like all that. Well, I think you can approach King Crimson without fear, because it's not all wizards and Rick Wakeman and whatever and capes and stuff, but it is definitely prog. It's definitely progressive, should I say? I think is the word to really use about it. If you imagine that you don't like prog rock, well, forget that term. Think about progressive music, because there's a lot of it in this, but it isn't like, let's forget that for a moment, because we don't listen to records as to find out how they work. We listen to them for enjoyment, don't we? And there's some very enjoyable, but also very engaging. None of this is really like just stick it on and do the washing up type music. This demands your attention. It's not like, if you don't listen, if you don't like it, you're not listening properly. I'm not saying that, but you find yourself listening carefully. It demands it. Very good canon, and I'm very pleased that I got into them. And it's a fairly recent thing. Like I say, 5 years ago, I'd not heard a King Crimson song apart from 21st Century Schizoid Man, which you can't avoid, as they ripped off Kanye. Years. But they are incredible. And they're influential and all that, but that doesn't matter. It doesn't make them sound any better. It doesn't make them nicer, does it? It doesn't make you like them more, the fact they're influential, but they are very influential. So if you like a bit of that. But I'd recommend them highly. And as I say, there are 4 albums there that are masterpieces. And there aren't many masterpieces in the world. I'm not saying there's loads of 5-star albums. I tend to only focus on artists that I consider to have some good records, clearly. But 4 masterpieces in a career, that's I can't think of many bands off the top of my head or artists at all that can match that. I shan't bother trying to think about that. I mean, there's certainly plenty that have 5-star albums, but actual masterpieces, as in shifting the agenda type stuff, I would mainly class them as, I think if I had to really say how do you describe their music, I would say it's classical music played by heavy metal musicians almost, which is the way it sort of comes across quite a lot of the time. There's a lot of classical influence. Like I say, early on there was a lot of jazz influence and a lot of folk. Prog, you see. Now, the prog whimsy is there in the earlier albums, definitely. But that soon goes with the sort of third iteration of the band from Lux, Tongues in Aspic onwards, which is remarkable. That is an unbelievable album. That's my favourite, I think. In fact, that run of the third band, that's hard to beat for anyone. Because I kind of brushed over Starless and Bible Black, but that's an amazing album. If that was their only ever album, you'd be like, God, this band were amazing. What could they have achieved? It's one of those types of albums, but gets a little lost in the wash because it's only a 5-star album. Anyhow, no invasion by the cats, I'm pleased to say, so I can get on with my day. Booyaka Shah, ladies and gentlemen. Fuck Trump, and see you all later. Put your comments down below. and tell me what you think about King Crimson in the style of Anthony Fantano. King Crimson forever. Transition.